In 2003, the United States-led coalition force invaded Iraq as part of the War on Terror following the insertion of forces into Afghanistan in November 2001. After the first and second battles of Fallujah in 2004, Ramadi was also on the list, a city of 500,000 which became the center of the insurgency forces in Iraq. Al-Qaeda's ad hoc support network, the Islamic State of Iraq, had declared Ramadi to be their capital. Like Fallujah, Ramadi would become a bloody killing ground combining all of the military assets and branches of service. Located just 68 miles west of Baghdad, the city was virtually in total al-Qaeda control, and pressure was on to take the city. Major Scott Huesing, then a captain and company commander of Echo Company 2nd Battalion 4th Marine Regiment, is our special guest providing his perspective. His book about the event, Echo in Ramadi, is highly suggested reading. What happened at Ramadi? Who was involved? How long did the fighting last? And what was the result? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. After a year of fighting in 2004, the Pentagon was planning on reducing U.S. forces in Iraq considerably and handing over the internal security responsibilities to the Iraqis. This decision was based in large part due to the military not realizing the vast undercurrent of Islamic militarism, the influx of foreign fighters, and the intimidation of the locals by the terrorists who used fear and coercion, as well as murder, to build their forces in urban areas. Fallujah and Baghdad filled the headlines, while at the same time Ramadi was becoming a hotly contested area in Anbar province. The commander of the Marine garrison, Major General James Mattis, stated that, "If Ramadi fell, the whole province goes to hell." The men of 2nd Battalion 4th Marines arrived in Ramadi in April 2004, joining U.S. Army Conventional and Special Operations units, along with Navy SEALs, all prepared to root out the insurgents with the support of the Iraqi military and police.
In 2004, when the situation in Iraq and all of al-Anbar province was really boiling over, and when I say boiling over, it was literally spilling off the stove into the burners. And what had been happening is the battle itself throughout al-Anbar province, and Ramadi being the capital city of al-Anbar province, was key. But it had turned into this giant game of whack-a-mole where very well-trained insurgent fighters would pop up in one city. We had enough forces on the ground at the time, to manage that. And in 2004, 2nd Battalion 4th Marines was in Ramadi, and they had a heavy fight on their hands, and there just weren't enough troops.
The objective included supporting the economy and government in Ramadi while coalition building with the local tribes, re-establish the Iraqi police in Ramadi, increase the capability of the allied Iraqi Army Battalion, and link the sheiks of Anbar with the government of Iraq, fostering a united front as a national identity rather than a loose confederation of clans. What was planned as a 3 to 4 month-long operation turned into a year-long struggle in 2 phases. On April 6th, the insurgents launched deadly attacks on the Marines throughout the city. The Marines fought against the insurgents throughout that city in running gun battles through streets and into buildings. By the end of the first day, 12 Marines of 2-4 had been killed. Despite what Washington was saying, the Magnificent Bastards, the nickname of the 4th Marine Regiment, realized that this is not going to be a smooth, sweep, and clear operation. Following the initial April 6 attack, the Marines of 2-4 never stepped back, but advanced. According to the 2-4 battalion commander at the time, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Weiler, the next day we ended up killing a hefty number of bad guys. On the third day of the battle, the Marines went around with megaphones, challenging the insurgents to come out and fight. To quote them, "We ridiculed them and antagonized them and begged them to come out and fight," Weiler said. According to the Marine Corps, during that first 4-day period, the battalion had killed 250 insurgents.
It's crippling for some people, but I think that one of the great things about the Marines and the soldiers that fought in these two wars over the past 20 years, the training that they get, it really does prepare them for it. And it was astounding to me as I wrote the book, and I went back and I understood that I looked at their ages. They were all so young in comparison to a guy like me who was a 35-year-old captain. I'd been enlisted before. I'd been to war before. I'd been in combat. And how they were all 18, 19 years old for the most part.
After 6 months of fighting in Ramadi, 34 Marines and a Navy corpsman had been KIA, and 269 Marines had been wounded. The city remained an unstable environment throughout the course of the 2000s, which led to the subsequent battle in 2006. 5 NMCB-CBs were killed in action and 31 were wounded. By the end of the battalion's first tour in September 2004, they had lost the 33 Marines and a sailor, but fighting in Ramadi would continue for several years, sporadically, resulting in another second Battle of Ramadi in 2006. 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines would once again visit the City of Death.
Again, when you're conducting combat operations in an urban environment, it's not a sterile environment. I mean, again, think about this. In any city that you live in, a city of over 300,000 people, we're operating day to day. We're living in the houses that people own. They're trying to go about their daily lives. And there's a ton of bad guys operating in the city with no uniforms. So trying to identify the bad guys was a challenge in and of itself. But having the support of the local people was key. And in a tribal system like Iraq, where the rule of authority reigns heavier than the rule of law in most cases, I think that did help us out to a great degree. We were thankful for it.
Governor Mamoun Sami Rashid was the elected leader of Al-Anbar province, but he was not trusted by many of the tribal leaders or the people in general, and his election was very questionable. Most of the sheikhs believed that he was working with al-Qaeda. By 2006, the situation was untenable, and U.S. forces would concentrate on several areas, with Ramadi being one of these.
So you fast forward 2 years, and that's when President George Bush and General Petraeus and General Abizaid, they ordered the surge strategy, which really allowed the coalition to flood the battle space with an additional 10,000 plus troops. Our unit that was reconstituted again as part of the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit, we were thrust in as part of the Theater Reserve, and we were dispersed to all of those areas. So now in 2006, that giant game of whack-a-mole, we had enough pressure to apply on all of those places, because before we showed up with those numbers, they would pop up in a city like Fallujah or Baghdad, and we'd hammer them to the ground like fine powder, and they'd kind of seep into the shadows. But then they'd move to an area of least resistance, and then they'd pop back up. So in 2006, this was a decisive point in the war. And a lot of people talk about the Battle of Ramadi in those two categories, Colin, 04 and 06. But I propose that it was really a 2-year battle with highs and lows in this sine wave of fighting in a city of over 300,000 people. And securing that city, which was not only the capital of Al-Anbar province, but one of the largest cities west of Baghdad, also ran one of the major supply routes from the western border of Syria all the way back over to the eastern side of Iraq.
By May 2006, al-Qaeda had declared Ramadi the capital of the so-called New Islamic Caliphate, and it was destroying all government services that the duly elected government provided. They destroyed schools, hospitals, cell phone towers, and assassinated local government officials, teachers, and all Western-oriented professionals. This was their campaign of terror used to control the locals. The units involved included 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, 1st Battalion 506th Infantry, Task Force Currahee, 1st Battalion 37th Armor, Task Force Bandit, 2nd Battalion 3rd Field Artillery, 16th Engineer Battalion, 501st Forward Support Battalion, 3rd Battalion 8th Marine Regiment, and a detachment of U.S. Navy SEALs. The Ready First Combat Team's immediate mission was to conduct a relief in place of 2nd Brigade, 28th Division of the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. Major Scott Huesing, then a captain, was the commander of the legendary Echo 24, and he explains the events in question.
We stood on the deck of the USS Boxer, afloat in the Persian Gulf, when our MU commander, now retired General Brian Boudreaux, on the Marine Corps birthday on 10 November, and he gave us the news that we were being committed as a theater reserve. And what happened with the battalion landing team of over 1,200 Marines and sailors, we were really farmed out to cover down on different areas. So several companies went up north to Haditha. Some of the companies went out west to Camp Korean Village. And two companies, myself, commanding Echo Company 24, and John Smith, who commanded Fox 24, we were sent to work in Ramadi under the command of the 2nd Brigade Combat Team under then Colonel Sean McFarland. They even farmed us out again. John went to work up north with a couple task forces up there. I immediately went to work with Task Force 19 Infantry at Camp Corregidor, which was really the center of the city. And when we showed up, there was a lot of hyperbole. There was terms like the heart of darkness and the bowels of the war and the deadliest streets. And hyperbole or not, they're pretty darn close. I mean, there was some of the most intense fighting I'd ever seen in my career up until that point, where we were, heavily engaged with a very well-trained enemy force, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day in direct contact. So it wasn't a matter of if we were going to get in a firefight and slug it out with these guys. It was just how long it would be and how often. We could almost set our watches by it.
November 2006 would see Battalion Landing Team 24 once again in Ramadi and joining a coalition of forces as part of the 2,200 Marines from the 15th Expeditionary Unit, which was a reserve force stationed on ships in the Persian Gulf. They included the Army's 1st Battalion, 37th Armored Regiment at the request of General Abizaid.
Colonel Ferry was one of the sharpest guys, and he loved having us there. He loved the fact that I rolled in with a company strength pure of like 179, and then with all my attachments, at one point I was close to 250 Marines, soldiers, sailors, interpreters, dog handlers, contractors. I grabbed anybody with a rifle, Colin, that wanted to fight. They wanted to get out in the street and slug it out, and they were trained to do it. I had a spot for them because I knew that we had a lot of ground to cover. And both Colonel Ferry and some of the other commanders I worked for, they loved that, because in comparison to the Army company unit strength, they had been taking some massive casualties in the city. Their company strength was about 80, sometimes as low as 60. So when we rolled in, we really wielded a big club. And I think that they said it, and I wrote about it. Colonel Ferry and Colonel Johnson, they loved wielding us around like this big club of destruction, and it was effective for us. So the communication and the symbiotic relationship we had with their mission that they had been enduring for 8 months before we even showed up, it was phenomenal. The type of support that we got, not only from mobility, medevac, casevac, ammunition resupply, we were reinventing terms on the battlefield as we fought, because we were expending so much ammunition in such a confined space. But it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. There's nothing we really had ever trained for either. So a lot of this fighting, a lot of the tactics, you had to be a little bit creative at times, and maybe I operated a little bit unconventionally at times, but we had a mission, and that was to kill or capture insurgent fighters in that city, and we did it.
One of the first to see direct action was Captain Christopher J. Bronzy, skipper of Gulf 2-4, who led his Marines in 24 hours of constant combat. Once he led a team of his Marines onto the street to recover the body of a Marine while under intense fire. Gulf Company constantly received small arms fire and RPG fire in the Al-Ma'ab district, where they forced the insurgents into nearby buildings where 2 squads and a quick reaction force continued fighting. The squads were pinned down, and the quick reaction force moved to a support position 1 block east of Gulf Company where they were engaged. Echo Company received word of an IED on the eastern outskirts of the city and received small arms fire while cordoning off the company perimeter. Also, at that time to the east, one of the battalion's sniper teams on position near the Euphrates River was attacked by 12 to 14 men. Soon afterward, an Echo Company patrol was ambushed. When the quick reaction force was sent to reinforce the patrol, it was attacked and 2 Humvees were hit, and the platoon commander was critically wounded.
The battlefield in Ramadi was something different at the time because, again, that city was where they had just chosen to fight at that time. And there was a large number of foreign fighters, local fighters. There were third-party fighters, sympathizers that took up arms against the coalition troops. And the city at this time was flooded with an entire brigade of Army fighters. We had 2 Marine companies now operating. We had all kinds of other cats and dogs working in the city. So it was very fluid. The rules of engagement at the time for us were very unrestrictive. They were very permissive. So we were allowed wide latitude. The rules of engagement, however, in different cities fluctuated. Even during our time in Al-Anbar province, when we shifted from one city to another, those rules of engagement could change.
November would be a steady grind, but the Allied forces were turning up the heat. On December 1st, 2006, Operation Squeeze Play went into effect when a 900-strong task force entered around the 1st Battalion, 37th Armored Regiment. Their target was central Ramadi.
In Ramadi, if you were out at night, shoot them. If you're digging a hole, shoot them. If you're driving, shoot them. Everything was a threat. It was almost akin to when General Mattis threw down the gauntlet in Fallujah and said, look, I'm giving you guys 72 hours. If you want to fight us, stay in the city like men, women and children, get out, go hang out with your neighbors, go someplace else, but we're going to bring it to you.
On December 6th, 6 American soldiers were killed in heavy street fighting. 3 of these soldiers, 2 soldiers and a Marine, were killed in the area west of Ramadi, controlled by the Abu Alwan tribe, which was aligned with the Awakening movement, as Scott Huesing explains.
Thankfully, having good top cover from Lieutenant Colonel Ferry, he was one of the main guys that really reached out to the tribal leaders and the sheikhs to the point where I don't know if it was our second or third day at Camp Corregidor, we're watching it on unmanned aerial vehicles on these drones or whatever you want to call them on the live screen as insurgents were attacking the local sheikh's house in Jubail. And Colonel Ferry didn't hesitate. He jocked up his own personal convoy, shot over there, had ISR on station, and they repelled the assault. I mean, we watched it. It was like Tom Clancy movie as we watched bodies drop in the reeds along the riverbed and the vehicles roll in and save his family. After that act by Colonel Ferry, ironically, we did not receive a single mortar attack the entire time we were there because the local tribal leaders and the sheikh, really laid down the law and said, look, if you're lobbing mortars in the air against the coalition forces, we're going to come find you in your sleep and we're going to cut your throats out. It was that brutal.
By the end of the operation on January 14, 2007, U.S. forces had killed 44 insurgents and captured a further 172. 4 additional Iraqi police stations were established during the operation, which brought the total to 14. During that January of 2007, as part of the U.S. troop surge in Iraq, 4,000 Marines in al-Anbar province had their tour of duty extended by 45 days. The order included the 15th MU and 1st Battalion 6th Marine Regiment fighting in Ramadi, as well as the 3rd Battalion 4th Marine Regiment fighting elsewhere in al-Anbar. The 1st Brigade Combat Team, 3rd Infantry Division, was also arrived on its 3rd tour to Iraq. The Second Battle of Ramadi in early 2007 saw Task Force 19, comprising the Army's 1st Battalion 9th Infantry Regiment, with support from Abrams main battle tanks of the 3rd Battalion 69th Armored Regiment, Navy SEALs, Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, and dismounted infantry from Bravo Company, 1st Battalion 26th Infantry Regiment, Charlie Company of the 321st Engineer Battalion, Lima Company of 3rd Battalion 6th Marine Regiment, and infantrymen from the veteran Iraqi Army 1st Brigade, and launched an offensive in East Ramadi named Operation Murfreesboro. U.S. forces were engaged approximately 35 times per day, but after 8 weeks, due to the task force raider commanded by 1st Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division, the attacks dropped off to 1 or 2 per day. The plan was to cut off the Malab district from the rest of Ramadi in order to drive out al-Qaeda beginning February 20, 2007, when tanks and IFVs from the 369th Armor and 126th Infantry closed off Malab district, preventing all movement in or out. Then the Army's 1st and 9th Infantry Regiments started clearing operations searching for weapons, IEDs, enemy fighters, and high-level al-Qaeda leaders in Malab district and Iskan district, supported by armored vehicles, Apache helicopters, and long-range rockets. February 2007 saw more than 40 separate engagements against al-Qaeda, with 8 large weapons caches being found, over 20 IEDs deployed against U.S. and Iraqi Army forces, more than 50 IEDs located and rendered harmless, 69 enemy fighters killed, with at least 9 enemy wounded and 32 captured. Iraqi police and army slowly took control. Operation Murfreesboro secured Anbar province, launching the Anbar Awakening, where the vast majority of the people abandoned al-Qaeda in favor of the new Iraqi government in Baghdad. It was so successful that little assistance was needed during the surge later in 2007.
There was a great facade of how the Iraqi police were being propped up by the coalition forces. True story. We would have these same Iraqi soldiers that were legitimate soldiers, and we would give them police uniforms. They'd walk in one door, they'd don their police uniform as if they'd just been recruited, and they'd walk out the back side, and then they'd circle back through again. We could watch it. It was almost like a puppet show. It was smoke and mirrors to show any onlookers, local citizenry, or insurgents that we were indeed building a police force. The fact is, nobody had the guts in that city to put a badge and a gun on and say we were going to enforce the law in Iraq, because it was lawless. It was like the Wild West as far as law went in Ramadi in 2006.
Southern and central Ramadi were largely pacified by August 2007. Ramadi had gone 80 consecutive days without a single attack on U.S. forces, and the 1st Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division Commander Colonel John Charlton stated, "Al-Qaeda is defeated in al-Anbar." But there would be sporadic attacks, such as on June 30th, 2007, when a group of between 50 and 60 insurgents attempting to infiltrate Ramadi were intercepted and destroyed, followed by a tip from Iraqi police officers. They were intercepted by elements of the 1st Battalion's 77th Armor on July 1st, and they were destroyed by Bravo Company, 2nd Squad, 1st Platoon of the 1st Battalion, 18th Infantry Regiment, operating out of the Tamim district of Ramadi's western sector. 369 Armor headquarters had been moved north of Ramadi and engaged al-Qaeda hiding in rural areas north of the city. After a few counterinsurgency operations, 369 Battalion and the 1st Battalion 8th Marines effectively removed al-Qaeda from Anbar province. In March 2008, Ramadi, Iraq had become a much safer place than the year before, with attacks becoming extremely rare. The Battle of Ramadi did not get as much press attention as Fallujah or Baghdad, but it was a critical factor in reducing the strength of al-Qaeda, uniting the local population and its leaders against the terrorists, and establishing a firm Allied footprint, making not just the city, but the entire province safer for all.
Yeah, I think there's people that when they transition out of the military too, they they want to leave it behind, and that's fine. And I've been very fortunate, I think, to be one of those people, and you have a certain capacity that's built inside of you as a warrior, and I view it as a lifelong commitment. It's who I am, and as far as being a Marine, you're a Marine for life. There's no expiration on my commission, and I feel that it's really my privilege to continue to lead long after we've transitioned. And guys get a little bit older, you get a little bit of gray in your beard, you get some of the guys gain a little weight, but we're all the same people. We're all still warriors for life, and I think that in this modern day society, that warrior spirit and that ethos, that warrior class of people, needs to be fostered.
Our thanks to Major Scott Huesing for his input and his service. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.